Hey guys, Mustached Tom here to review Deadpool and Wolverine. Now, of course, the trailers for this movie have been out and about, and they have been pushing this movie because, of course, they have. It's not surprising that Marvel was probably extremely desperate with this one, and I have made no qualms about it in the past. I've reviewed Deadpool disfavorably and Deadpool 2 disfavorably, remarking on each of their flaws, and I was considering going back to those movies to potentially trying to recontextualize if my thoughts held up, but I was like, I simply just don't have the energy to do it anymore, to go back and watch the other previous two movies. I just didn't enjoy Deadpool at all the initial time I watched it, and I do think that a huge chunk of that it was in the way they handled its genre elements, and I'll go into detail on what I mean by that. So, Deadpool's obviously a fourth wall breaking character, so it is to its nature that I would expect it to, break the fourth wall and try to be comedic about it. That is a given. However, balancing that between the serious moments is where, a lot of people defend Deadpool and say, oh, it was really funny, and simultaneously it had, its bits and romance, I guess. I don't remember. I don't know if I would say if those two things are even close to equal. I remember this one bit in the movie. It really stood out to me in terms of the type of movie it was aiming to be. Is that there's an entire segment where these two characters, jab at each other, essentially. Deadpool and his friend, or, whatever. And this scene, it felt like it went on for 5 minutes, and it's just back and forth insult, between the two characters, and that's the entire bit. And to me, why that didn't work, and why a lot of the comical bits didn't work, is that it felt like a lot of isolation with, very, okay, so let me try to nail this down, because it's a bit complicated to explain. So, obviously, the whole bit about that particular scene is Deadpool's face as the example. That is the bit. They're gonna, he's gonna get mocked for having the face, right? And the other guy, who's gonna get mocked for whatever, right? And that's the entire bit. And, okay, so you have your setup, right? It's literally Deadpool's face, in terms of referring to Deadpool, right? And instead of sprinkling throughout the movie and sort of making these variant jabs throughout the movie and sort of shifting it in a way that it's oh, that's actually a little neat pattern almost, instead of doing it that way, which I think is so much more effective in terms of writing, when you just have this very linear path where you can go, oh, that is a joke with a proper setup. Instead, they just barrage you in the movie, and I don't think that's ever a great strategy in terms of comedy in itself, in the genre, very often. Your barrage would have to be very brutal. It would have to be, almost. I don't think you could leave room for any subtlety, and I would agree that Deadpool meets that requirement, but there's just something about other elements of that also don't work, because it also comes down to very specific things, the delivery, for example, of all of these blunt jokes are very stale, and I'm why? It was and again, I'm like, is Ryan Reynolds just not very good at being Deadpool? As early as Deadpool 1, I was like, is he the right guy for Deadpool? I'm looking at this performance and I'm going, no, he's not. He's not really engaging in a way that makes you go, that's Deadpool. That's the character that is mocking people to their face in a way that is very, very direct. There's something that's very stiff about his performance, very much so in Deadpool 1 at least, that's very, very noticeable, or at least I remember feeling that way toward the first movie. And so I went, and I was like, okay, this movie isn't working. Deadpool 2 comes out, and I'm like, fine, I'll give this one a shot. And, you know, I have a different set of gripes with it, but I was like, oh, Colossus, that's a good character. Because now he has someone to play off of that I do think that he's written a lot better than the love interest character in terms of, like, the back and forth. Like, the way they utilize Colossus in the second movie in particular is so great. And it's the only part that I will probably praise about the second movie, from what I can remember of that one, is the efforts to have Colossus consistently be that type of character. And again, more so utilizing what I just expressed, is that more linear, like he's going to continuously throughout the movie, when he's in the movie, you know, be that type of character. And you're like, oh, I can kind of see where you're going, and now, you know, you can even have the snap part, and that part will make sense because we have followed the line. So the snap will actually make sense if and when it happens. Okay, you nailed it. And everything else in that movie felt like a disaster that just followed the first movie's, you know, thing. Killing off the girlfriend, which is going to come into this movie very abruptly, and it's like, okay, you just negated the second movie's, like, big thing, right? So you're gonna really have to, like, put something forward to have that be, you know, uplifted, and it not coming off as this backhanded remark, which, oh boy. There's two things in this movie that I just, we're gonna have to get to them. Let's say that for certain. Sorry for the cut, but I am back, and I just got done framing the first two Deadpool movies in terms of why I ranted against those movies, and why, when coming into Deadpool and Wolverine, the third installment, my expectations were actually fairly low despite all of the hype behind the trailers. I got the gist, you know, from the trailers that some leverage of the time, you know, space stuff that has been occupying the MCU was going to occupy this movie, and I immediately thought it was, oh no, they're gonna fuck this up, aren't they? And sure enough, here we are. So this is my review / rant, yes, rant, of Deadpool and Wolverine, because I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna immediately set it out of the gate. I think this is one of the worst trilogies of all time, and that is sad to say. I mean, we can now look to one of the best examples of a trilogy, that being Lord of the Rings, and now we can actually look to the opposite side of the spectrum, which, no, for me, is Deadpool 1, 2, and this and Wolverine, being our set of three movies that, well, I thought the first was really, really bad. I thought the second was a little slightly better, but still overall bad, and this third one has two good scenes in it, and the rest of this is just so awful. It is so terrible. I don't know who wrote this. I don't know what they were thinking. But by God, did they just drop the ball again? Okay, So let's dive right into it. So the movie begins with a not so shockingly opening with Deadpool narrating breaking the fourth wall once again, and he talks about how Marvel has been relatively stupid right now, which, considering the certain scenes in this movie, I'm like, well, I mean, seems to slot right in then, because, my god, there are two particular fight scenes that we have a lot of issues to go over in quite a bit, but we'll get to those in due time. So, even their attempt to be comedic is off-put by making the same exact mistake. That's not good satire, I'm afraid. The boys do it better. Just being completely brutally honest. Like, you can see their transparency behind the boys, whereas I look at this and I'm like, are the people who wrote this tone deaf? What is happening? Why is it that you have two fight scenes where, some of the worst offenders of MCU stuff has come from, for example, Doctor Strange 2, The Multiverse of Madness, had some of the worst scenes in it, and you want to duplicate that again? Why? Why do you think that would work? How do you even pull the comedy out from that nonsense? That absolute bullshit? Seems impossible, and this movie really reinforces that really hard, if you ask me. So, we don't begin the movie at the beginning. Since this is a timeline movie, we're actually sort of in the 25% mark in the movie, at least in the beginning portion. So he goes to find Wolverine. He's already doing so, and he's going to find the version of him from Logan. For those of you who don't remember that movie, that's the movie where Logan dies. So he goes to dig up the literal corpse of Wolverine, and, he does his bit where he's mocking Wolverine and all that. About how, they do this bit about the, making the money off of this character, and I think that bit overextends itself a bit better here, I will agree. Because they actually thread it a little bit better throughout the movie instead of condensing it all into one section of the movie. Whereas the time police arrive, and then Deadpool uses the bone weapons, and cut interspersed with that is him breaking the fourth wall to dance to the music that is actually, playing for us, the audience, but of course he can break the fourth wall, he can dance to the music, and then simultaneously, I guess, the enemies freeze during those parts. I'm assuming that's how that has to work, because I don't see any other way around that, but so I'll give the movie that much faith, is that's how that power works when he breaks the fourth wall, is that things freeze around him, I would have to assume, because otherwise I'm like, there's just too many questions, right? About how he'd be able to dance this section and then fight, dance like that, but, anyway. And we go back and we're already dealing with the sacred timeline. So we're already delving into the time stuff, and of course that means we need another explanation about how that works, and of course we get it in this movie. And, it's like, whatever. I couldn't be parsed to really make any heads or tails of it. Point being, we're just gonna move ahead. Deadpool meets with Tony Stark's driver, I believe he's like the co-director or writer of some of the movies, and I'm a bit surprised they didn't, he didn't like break the fourth wall to address that. Like, hey, aren't you like a writer or something in the movie or whatever? Like, that never actually comes up in this movie at all. I'm a little bit surprised that it doesn't. So missed opportunity for some reason? I don't know. So he's, desperately asking to be an Avenger. Okay, fine. And then he's denied. Because of the answer he's giving. He wants to feel like he's somebody in this world. And this is the only sympathetic part I can give Deadpool, at least outside of the one other good scene that I think he has in this movie, is that, at least in this context, like, thinking about myself personally, subjective experience outside of what's happening in the movie, it's like, yeah, there is that feeling of, wanting to fit into a place and having prior experience and stuff, and then going to, an interview, which is pretty much what this is, and then having the other person across from you just be like, yeah, they say the nice things, and, this is a bit more on the frank side, so he's like, you don't have what it takes, but to then have, have that time pass and you never get that job opening, it's like, well, yeah, I can definitely sympathize with a character that, who feels like he wants to be given that chance, because that so rarely happens in our real world, right? That's where I think the strength of great comedy comes from, is like when you can incorporate it into the real world and use it to address something that is, can actually hit a lot more people, I'm sure, that have felt this way, of that need to, prove yourself, for that, you get that first opportunity to step up, in this case it's a big slot, right? It's to be an Avenger. It's a pretty big thing, but you can small scale it, and it's still, that weight still feels like, please, I am begging you, right? Give me the opportunity. I'm willing to show you what I got. One chance. And that's the what makes it the part so tragic, is that he's denied that opportunity, right? As so many people in real life would be. And that's probably one of the very few scenes that I would say is actually fairly really good. And bizarrely, I would argue that this movie, in particular, its dramatic moments are far superior. They are the best dramatic scenes in a long time from anything in the MCU, and they outweigh the comedy like 10-0. Like, the drama in this movie is so good, and there's so many short scenes of it, and it's so good that I definitely want to take the opportunities to isolate those scenes, because I don't want to just be like, oh, this entire movie is trash. No, I want to be as objective as possible. I do want to highlight when this movie is truly a masterclass of how to write in an expert way. But that also means criticizing this movie, and as I mentioned before, those fight scenes have so much left to be desired, and it's absolutely embarrassing, the absolute shit show we got for two of them anyway. So yeah. So 6 years pass, and you're like, okay, I can't be an Avenger, so I'll get this lower end job as this car salesman, or whatever. And he's with this new guy named, I wrote it in my notes somewhere, let's see, I think his name was like Pete or something. I'll just call him Pete because I don't remember. But I don't see it in my notes immediately. So Pete is Deadpool's new main friend, I guess. And he's there having his birthday party. Colossus is present once again. He's not utilized in this film, obviously, unfortunately, because we have a new batch of heroes to be like, ooh, it's the cameo section of the movie, right? And you know that's all fun and good, but there's the asterisks to that as well. And then we come to the bit that it was in like trailer after trailer after trailer, and when you see it in the movie, it's like, well, why'd you throw it in the trailer so many times? It's the cocaine bit with mentioning how Feige is going to be like all up in arms against it, and how like, you know, all the different names, and you know, it's just, it feels like a longer bit than it needs to be, right? And again, it's the delivery here specifically, and like, why doesn't this feel punchy? Why does it feel like every time they're trying to do comedy, or the comedy bits, there's no punch? There's never any punch to any of the comedy bits, ever, in any of the Deadpool movies. It's so weird. And again, I don't know what I can contribute that to. Is it Ryan Reynolds' performance? Because, again, I think there was a dramatic scene that he does take part in this movie. I'm pretty sure I have it in my notes, if that's the case. I'm trying to go in order here, but it's like, what is happening? Why isn't it punching in the comedy field anyway, at any significant portion? It never feels like it's even worth the chuckle, almost. It's just like, especially with the amount of times they play the trailer, and it's just like, stop over promoting people. You gotta hold some of the punches, your comedy bits, if you want them to be, you know, have that legitimate laughter. Like, you know, comedy has the unfortunate side effect of having that very short window, right? I mean, you can only laugh at a joke so many times. I think. I mean, unless you are thinking like top tier comedian stuff, like, unless it's that. Otherwise, I don't know like where you could actually, you know, achieve that, unless again you're consistently peak, which again is it's such a hard bar to climb, and I barely think this scraps the surface of being comedy. So, you know, they're digging on Disney once again, threading that needle a little bit more throughout the movie, so good. That's what I would have preferred in the first Deadpool movie, so I'm glad that they're actually utilizing that pacing a little bit more here, at least for one of their jokes. So, we have the time people from Loki, I don't even know what they're called again, I already forgot. And the main villain, his name is Paradox, but I just called him, after a few scenes, I was like, I'll just call him the Time Guy, because fuck it, I couldn't be asked to keep writing Paradox in my notes. And then they do the scene where, you know, they're watching the screens, and we see previous nostalgia bait, and I'm like, really? That's what you're gonna go for? And, like, you know, it's just like, really? And there's not really, like, any, again, the comedy bits that, because they're trying to play this scene a little bit more seriously, right? Because they're trying to be like, oh, remember the good old times, right? So it's like, okay, so you're playing that seriously, and then, you know, you have the break. So, you know, after that scene, or that moment, he literally breaks away to head toward the camera, us, and break it. As well as hit the microphone and flirt with the guy that seems to be interested in him, I guess. I don't know. And maybe, again, the scene, I don't know who the other actor is, I didn't quite pick up on it, I guess. Maybe it wasn't strong enough. Maybe, I don't know. something about that, it didn't quite, like, go, I see, you're doing the obvious one. It's like, no, so you're not even hinting at it subtly. It's like, it's almost like you're trying to allude that it's not that, so it comes off as really weird again. These weird decisions in terms of where the actors are and what they're doing sometimes, a lot of the times in these movies, is so baffling to me. So, he gets told that Logan is responsible, or like a big portion of why this sacred timeline needs to be, like, he's like this protector or whatever. And I guess that really, that really speaks volumes to how good Logan was as a film, that this movie would be like, that's part of our sacred timeline. I guess that's a nod. That to me feels like a proper nod. And you know what? They didn't have to show any nostalgia bait. They just talked about it. It's like, that. Have more of that. Actually, just talk about the scenes. You don't have to, like, replay the scenes. I know what they are. You don't have to show them on a screen for nostalgia bait. You could just actually just talk about the scenes. Ugh. I don't know. Something about those visual cues, to me, is very off-putting, but whatever. It's not the worst offense in the world, I guess. Because it does get worse, unfortunately. And, they have, Deadpool has some mockery outside of Deadpool, like he mocks, Will Smith's smack, which, I don't know, it feels like again, the time scope of that joke feels like it's already too late, I guess. Like, I don't know, I maybe that's just me, but I mean, even the delivery of it, just, again, something about it doesn't even if, that whole bit's meant to be funny, which I know it's meant to be funny, it never feels punchy enough. Again, the performance is one of the key issues here. Again. So yeah, he finds a version of Logan, and then we cut to a montage of him finding various Logans and having to fight various versions of the Wolverines across, the different time threads. And then he meets, the Logan here, and I'll admit, I have no clue what Logan this is. Apparently, this is, I don't know if this is after X-Men 1, 2, or 3, or, of the continuous adventures of X-Men. Like, what he's referring to at this point, he's, like, referring to how he abandoned the X-Men, he's talking about this in-between movie, and I'm like, what version of Logan did you pull from? Is this something from a comic book that I'm not aware of? Like, what is this from? Like, I have legitimately no clue, especially, if in the context of the movies, I really have no clue what version of Logan you're referring to. And to me, that is a massive issue. Like, I should be able to point to, Logan, for example, the movie Logan, and be like, okay, that's, this timeline and whatever. And then, I should be able to say X-Men's Logan is perhaps a different Logan, right? But the Logan here seems like he's from a third separate franchise. And I'm like, what? What is happening? Why are we taking this out-of-pocket Logan that we have seen zero, like, again, I don't know what the gap is. Like, it's baffling to me, this decision. And yeah, say what you will about the suit, I don't care at this point. Like, one brownie point. Congratulations, you got a fucking brownie point in a scene where Logan is the most off-putting character for like 90% of his scenes, except for this one scene near the end of the movie. Like, what the fuck? Like, why that? Why give him that? It doesn't, none of it makes sense. Right. So, you know, Deadpool has, again, another jab at Disney. We haven't had one for a bit. He talks about how Wolverine's joining the MCU's low point, which, you know, has been contended as being very much the case. So, you know, I do appreciate the jabs throughout the movie instead of it all being condensed into this one section, right? And I don't remember there being a joke in Deadpool 1 that felt a lot like that. I can't point to one, unfortunately. I would have to rewatch the movie, and I have a feeling that I would only hate that movie more than I already do. So, the Time People send them both, Wolverine and Deadpool, to, you know, the trap heap zone, or the void, I guess they're calling it in this movie. And once they arrive, the two fight. And I'm just gonna say it, unfortunately, it's a fight with zero consequences. And I'm like, why? Why did they suddenly fight now? It just kind of comes out of nowhere. And, you know, Deadpool remarks is like, well, he came to see us fight. Like, that's, you know, Deadpool and Wolverine. Although, no, that's actually not a good joke, because the movie would have to be called Deadpool versus Wolverine. You fucked up the joke. Congratulations. If the thing between Deadpool and Wolverine is an and, you don't expect there to be a fight, you expect them to team up. More than likely than not, right? Or at least, you know, if there is going to be a fight, which, you know, they actually do end up doing this, is that they do end up cooperating toward the end of the movie, at the very most. So it has that symptom of the problem of, you know, the actual titling of the movie portrays this section of the movie rather than the entirety of the movie. You know, and whether or not that can be criticized in its own right. And, you know, I don't know where I necessarily land on that take, per se. It's definitely a fine line to cross, I will say. I think it can be done well. I think that it would have to be really, really tight. You know, Godzilla is definitely an example that would come up fairly often, if not the most often. For an example of, like, one that I would think of, like, oh, like, you know, of the creature being hidden or whatever and all that stuff, and seeing whatever payoff. So, once again, they use for the third time, the superhero landing joke, because we have to reuse some jokes, and we see what Deadpool assumes is initially Captain America, but it turns out that he's actually playing the Human Torch, so they're using that bit because he, you know, the actor did play both the Human Torch and Captain America, so they use that as a 1 second bit, and nothing is actually made in terms of Deadpool, which is, again, baffling that Deadpool doesn't call that out, again. So, another missed opportunity, again. So I'm like, why are you missing opportunities, again? And not only that, he's in the movie for like a few minutes. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is where the rest of the movie just shits the bed. Like, what are we doing? The Human Torch is introduced, and then they're brought to, the three of them now, they're brought to this, sister of Charles, that was different universe, blah blah blah, whatever. I don't even remember her name, honestly. we'll just call her the Mind Lady. I think that's what I just started referring to her in my notes later on when she comes into play. But she, like, Deadpool, like, has this whole bit where and it's one of those longer bits again, where he's talking about all the stuff that Human Torch has said, and, Human Torch is trying his best to defend himself, but he's getting continuously cut off, and then he's done. He's out of the movie. It's like, why have him in the movie? What was the point of that? Did you learn nothing, again, from the cameo disaster that was Doctor Strange 2? Having all those cameos and having death after death after death. Did you learn nothing, writer? No. What the fuck? What is this? And he's not the only one. He's literally followed up in this span of like a few seconds after his vaporization, Sabretooth. He was placed in the trailers time and time again, and he's killed in seconds, and I'm like, what? What are you doing? This massive missed opportunity, and you kill him in seconds. This might actually be worse, or just, again, equally as bad as, the Multiverse of Madness deaths. It's like, you killed him in a matter of seconds. Why? What made you think that that was going to work? What were you thinking? So, get this, they then decide to use they have this magnetizing thing on one of their cars, and only after they kill Sabretooth did they decide to use it instead of beforehand. Even though they can see that Wolverine has the claws. Brains. Do characters use them? I guess not. So, we meet inside of the dead body of Ant-Man. I actually did write her name, Cassandra, but Mind Lady. Continues, makes her official, continued approach. And again, is, that scene, that thing. I actually wrote it out of order, so I do apologize. I think that happens after, whatever. Point being, those two things happen, they're like right next to each other. I forget which one happens first. Anyway. So, she's messing with Wolverine. And we have our first set of flashbacks. And he has, he stabs her away. And he has an opportunity right now, because he was like thrown away for a bit, and he's like behind her, and she's like addressing Deadpool currently, and Wolverine has the opportunity while being behind her just end her now, right? Just stab her in the head. Why not? Take the chance. What could because they didn't have, like, the concrete, like, she was going to do all this planning stuff, or they didn't even have the initiative to be like, oh, she's our only way out. I don't think they had that yet, so it's like, okay, so why wouldn't Wolverine, at this juncture in the movie, just decide not to kill her right away? What's the point? Sounds like someone's being lazy with the plot. Uh-oh. And I'm obviously going to call it out. This is such bad writing that they would utilize such absolute assassination of what Wolverine would do in this scenario. Wolverine, in the context that we have seen him, so far, seems to be attack first and ask questions later. Seems to be the character that they are trying to portray pretty quickly, so given the opportunity, you would think without the context that he would just go for the kill, which he doesn't have yet, so he would go for the kill, but he doesn't. He goes for the chest area, and I'm like, why? It's because of the plot. It's because they need the plot to continue to advance, so he stabs her in the chest, because the writers couldn't think of a creative way to get Wolverine to not kill her. So we had to some bullshit to get out of it, right? And the storm comes filing in, a literal storm that eats people or kills people. And the Mind Lady's like, yeah, this planet's cool. And I'm like, what? And bear in mind, her whole plan is like, this is the only planet that's gonna live. And I'm like, what? Why not look? If you have the ability, and she has Doctor Strange's ring somehow, by the way, she already has it in her possession. Why not travel to other timelines or other worlds or whatever you want to call them, check them out to see if they're better and make that the one definitive world? Not the world that has a sand monster that kills people. How about that for a devious plan? That at least sounds comprehensible. This is absolute bullshit writing. What is happening? Why is her plan to have this planet be her planet? It makes no sense. There's no logic to her schemes. She is one of the worst villains I've seen. And, like, it's just so baffling because none of the comical... This isn't played for comical bits. This is her, her devious plan. This is, like, what's gonna ruin the world. So that, it's played for the action sections of the movie, right? So it just comes off as so baffling that her plan is so stupid. And there's no joke about it. There's no jab at her for making her plan that stupid. And that's the Deadpool I see that is severely lacking. To take note of what the characters are doing in that moment and be like, wait a minute, I'm going to break the fourth wall and I'm going to call you out on your bullshit. That's the Deadpool that is missing in this scene right now. That is urgent and it is missing. Because you need to criticize the very thing that you're taking part of right now if you want to truly be a good satire, right? You have to acknowledge when the thing that the characters are saying is absolutely ass backwards, right? Deadpool needs to have that ability to break the fourth wall now, but he never does. It's not in the writing. I don't know what else to say. Like, what is this? Why is this movie so shit? Like, 90% of the time. I don't understand. So her plan is so stupid, so we have that, and it's not mocked or anything. Let's see. So the two get out. Deadpool and Wolverine get out of this by like finding some jet thing that like skyrockets them out of the scenario. A bit convenient, but fine, whatever. So they go to get a break. They go to get some food. And this, ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned, I will always tell you when a good scene happens, this is one of the very good scenes of this movie, and it's played seriously. Again, I mentioned this earlier, it's when this, bizarrely, when this movie becomes dramatic, it's seemingly 10 times better than when it's trying to be a comedy. So I'm a bit bewildered that they couldn't find a striking balance between the two. And the scene is between, what Wolverine means, why, they've had this sort of back and forth thus far. And after this one good scene in the food area, they leave and they run into, coincidentally, a dog Deadpool, or Dogpool, I guess, simplistically. And what's referred to as Kind Pool. This is also played by Renolds to go on that. And much like the Disney bit, one of the other mockeries that seems to be rather consistent, because I read it in my notes here, is that Deadpool consistently mocks the suit, even though it's the suit-accurate suit. still taking jabs at it, but it's like, okay, you're trying to, float that a few times throughout the movie, and again, instead of clustering all one section, fine. So the three are traveling, or the kind pool gives them a way of travel, and they're fighting, or they're talking in the car that leads them, where a scene where Wolverine finally, because Wolverine got a little bit of the overarching stuff during the food scene, so now is Wolverine's time, which I think is apropos. So again, I would probably argue one of the stronger scenes is his scene against Deadpool, and talking about how much of his journey has been this sort of misguided effort to join the Avengers and all of this stuff, and going about just mocking him, and actually having Deadpool almost give zero response. I think that's a very effective scene in terms of finding a good balance between comedy and drama, right? Because Deadpool is, for the first time, or I don't remember him having a good comeback at this particular moment anyway. And then they fight again. So they tire themselves out, and another convenience happens is that some third person ends up finding their car somehow and picking them up and driving them off towards another location to move the plot forward once again. So this is where we get our big cameo entourage of characters that stick around for the movie. Right, we have Elektra from the original, can't even remember his name right now. It's, wow, why am I blanking on his name? It's gonna bite at me, because I'm drawing an actual blank right now, but whatever. It's Elektra from the movie that she's in, partakes in with the other guy, the red one. Sorry, the judge guy, and my brain is trying to combine the pieces, and it's just not creating the name. That's what's happening right now, if you're wondering. I feel inclined to keep this in to show you that I'm, willing to make mistakes, and, be like, everyone's gonna comment, oh, it's that movie, you dumbass. Feel free to comment that makes me a dumbass, by the way, by all means. Anyway, there's Elektra, okay, there's Blade, which is probably the most surprising, because they actually got the original actor, because, he had all these legal issues and stuff, so I guess they settled that I don't know when, and I guess they managed to push him back into the movie, or just into the movie in general, so that's a bit of a surprising one. And then there's the one that I'm like, I don't know about this one, right? There's Gambit. Alright, so I remember it being tossed around about Gambit being played by Danny Tatum, or however you pronounce his name, and that's actually who they get. And I was always like, but why? I've never seen a movie where he played a Cajun-type character, and, this is his first attempt at it, as far as I can tell, because I can't distinguish this accent as being Cajun. Like, why didn't they just try to get someone with a decent Cajun dialect and then worry about the look after the fact? Or, really coach him better to get that Cajun accent down, because it does not come through in this movie at all, as far as I know. And then there's X-23. Speaking of Logan, they actually bring her back as well. So they're going over the plan to potentially helmet Mind Lady, because they have the Juggernaut's helmet. The Juggernaut from one of the X-Men movies, the the off, big tall one that does, that isn't comic accurate. So it's like, okay, so you've got a comic accurate Wolverine, but you're not going to do that for Juggernaut in this movie because you're going to carry over that same actor and the same costume? Why? Why do it for one character and not for the other? Why not give the Juggernaut his orange vintage suit that more people would probably in the comic sphere be like, that's the Juggernaut suit? And, double up on the Juggernaut, bitch. I mean, I know that the X-Men stole that joke from a parody on YouTube. I know. I'm aware that happened. But I mean, double up on the bit. Why not? I'm sure that they'd probably potentially get in trouble again. Or, trouble. I don't know. Like, did the people who made that video actually get any justice for the X-Men people completely ripping off on the Juggernaut bitch thing? Like, did they get anything for that? I don't know. I don't know the story behind that. So why not ask them, or, I don't know, have the bit happen again with X-23. I think that's a huge missed opportunity to double up on it. Whatever. So, yeah, all that's going down. And surprise, surprise, the next good scene is between Wolverine and X-23, which I'm not even remotely surprised with. With their rapport from Logan, I'm not surprised that these two were absolutely able to capture another great scene. Them more talking about Wolverine's past and now, whether he's fit to be the role that he is in, whether he's the worst or best Wolverine, which is, the consistent thing that seems to be pervading in this movie, even though, again, the lack of movie this comes from, despite it being missing, despite the setup being missing, the payoff is still wonderfully crafted, I will admit. And so, Pyro, one of the villains in this movie, makes a deal with the Time Guy to, I don't know, to get in on some other world or something. And speaking of references to other movies and taking their lines verbatim, well, actually before that, the characters are, talking about how many iterations are of each of them, Deadpool being of a variety, and Wolverine being a variety, and Blade, in this moment, mentioning how he claims that he's the only one, even though, as of right now, Blade is literally being remade right now, so, whoops, that joke completely just gone. Oh well. Anyways, the fight begins with our heroes and our villain group, and Blade gets to use one of the iconic catchphrases / meme lines of "some motherfuckers they're still trying to skate uphill." And I'm like, yeah, that's a good nostalgia bait in a line, instead of, again, referring to old movie clips. Actually have it in the dialogue. That is much preferred for me. In terms of if you are going to do the nostalgia bait, I'd rather have it cleverly crafted in the actual dialogue rather than being purely reminded via video clips of old stuff. I don't know. It's just a personal preference on that one, I guess. But point being, when X-23, for example, cuts down the Juggernaut, that, to me, would have been the opportunity to have Juggernaut be like, "But I'm the Juggernaut, bitch!" And that would have been the bit, but he doesn't do it. I'm like, why? You did it last time. Why not double up? You had the perfect setup and you didn't pay off again. So the Mind Lady Wolverine and Deadpool advance towards the Mind Lady, and then Mind Lady knocks out Deadpool and takes over Wolverine's mind for a bit. Meanwhile, X-23 gets the bag with the helmet on it and gets it to Deadpool, and during this, the Mind Lady's probing into trying to convince Wolverine that he should join forces with her throughout this entire endeavor. And in the sequence, Pyro gets knocked out, again, fairly quickly. And as I mentioned before, she has a frame of reference after being just talked to give them a strange portal. And again, I was wondering, why wouldn't she have done that for herself, again, earlier? And, they make another bit about them holding on to certain characters. This time it's Deadpool referring to Hugh Jackman, more specifically, I guess, holding on to him until he's 90. Which, I think the actor's in his 70s, I think? I don't know. I could be off on that one. Definitely an older actor at this point, but, ultimately, I would think that would be up to the actor, whether he decides to continue to be a part of this or whatever. I think that's, the double side of the dance is that, the actor needs to, sign the contract or whatever. And who knows if he really signed on for more than just this, right? I don't know, right? I don't know behind the scenes on that story, but whatever. So she goes over to take over the Time Man's device thing. It's this MacGuffin that will allow her to make the Void the only planet remaining, which again I already remarked about how dumb that planet is, but whatever. So this is another part of the movie that I'm just baffled by, and I'm like, what is this movie doing, right? So we have Deadpool and Wolverine. They're about to get back to her, because they portaled their way through. She portaled their way with them to get to this device. And then, moments later, another portal opens and a army of different variants of Deadpools walk through the barrier. And they go to stop Deadpool, and I'm like, but why? What? And their justification makes no sense to me. They are told that all of their worlds are going to die. And they're just like, yeah, we're fine with that. What? Did I miss something? Yeah, I get that Deadpools can be a little careless, but not that careless. Come on, you have to have some standards to the world you live in, I would think, right? It's not like these Deadpools can exist outside of that. At least I think they do, I guess. I don't know. It really is more of an excuse to have Deadpool and Wolverine finally working together for the first time in the movie outside of the, them just working together with the Mind Lady in the third sort of section of the movie. As I discussed earlier. It really is a weird, baffling excuse to get them to work together. Dare I say, a pretty piss-poor one. It doesn't make any logical sense as to why the other Deadpools would stop him, specifically. Especially after given the info that they're given. In this process, Kindpool dies, because I guess he just doesn't have regenerative abilities while the others do. And then, as I mentioned, injuring the other pools, I actually did write killing at first, because they remain on the floor for significantly longer than Deadpool does, the OG Deadpool, and then they regen after, they swap the floor with the various Deadpools. and that's his name, the other guy, the friend guy, Peter, which all of their worlds seem to have a Peter, which they all like. They're all a fan of this guy, and they all listen to him, so they're all crowding and cheering for this guy, and then that's what gives them an opportunity to leave to actually get back to the plot. So I'm like, wow, that was unnecessary and mischaracterizes like literally every variant of Deadpool I've ever seen. Thanks, Deadpool and Wolverine, for making Deadpool on every other universe that stupid. It's like, what was the point of that joke? It was an action scene, first of all, so it's not a joke, it's an action scene. So why character assassinate every Deadpool conceivable? What were they thinking with that one? And again, I don't think they thought that through. They did not think that through. They were thinking, oh, isn't it just going to be cool to get that action scene with Deadpool and Wolverine teaming up against other Deadpools, and not considering the consequences of what the villain wants in this movie? They did not think about what the villain was saying throughout the movie, what Deadpool literally just tried to explain to them for whatever reason. What is this writing? What is it? Because it seems like they were talking over each other constantly throughout the movie, outside of the 2 or 3 scenes that I have pulled that I have said are expertise in drama. Outside of those scenes, this movie is a disaster. It is a epitome of a disaster. So they get to the device with her, and Deadpool tries to say it should be him. Wolverine argues it should be him. They both have their different reasons. They both, so Deadpool ultimately gets in there first, and he's only able to cover halfway. Now, I'm imagining this was meant to be a reference to Guardians of the Galaxy, because I think that was the first movie that used the chain effect to be like, when heroes stand together, they can bear more pain, except instead of, the Guardians, which is made up of 4 characters, it's just made up of 2, which is Deadpool and Wolverine. Which is why the other Deadpool scene doesn't make any sense. To me, I think what should have happened is, I think those 2 devices, I think it should have been a long corridor, and then, the actual, engine part where the thing is, and have the corridor be, where the 2 beams are, have it stretched out further, and having Deadpool and Wolverine having to convince the different varying what Deadpools through different means. You could have had a quick montage of, a few of them, right? To get a better, understanding of certain of these Deadpools, and you can get a lot more bits out of that, while simultaneously making a reference to another movie and making the reference even stronger. That is how I think that should have been portrayed, instead of it just being Deadpool and Wolverine. And I get that the movie is called Deadpool and Wolverine, but I mean, if you're going to have Deadpools, plural, then why not utilize them to better effect? Why just throw them all aside? It doesn't make any sense. Why not utilize them for a greater good rather than throwing away their worlds for nothing? What is this writing? It doesn't make any sense. You have these opportunities, and you're absolutely just going asshat backwards, and it's just why? So, of course, with it being that it's their movie, they get to live. And, Deadpool butters up the new person in charge, because the timeline guy gets arrested or whatever, and some other timeline lady takes over. And Wolverine, I guess, just sticks around in Deadpool's timeline, even though he, fucks off for a bit, but then is, asked over for another party or whatever. And yeah, that is about where, the movie ends. And I'm like, This is the worst trilogy of all time. I don't know what else to say. I don't know what else to say other than that. Like, outside of a few good scenes, drama scenes, this movie is awful. And when I combine that with what I remember from Deadpool 1 and 2, I'm like, Deadpool 1 wasn't great. Deadpool 2 was slightly better, but still overall not great. And this one was just disastrous, outside of a few good scenes. Not great, and disastrous except 2 good scenes. This is the worst trilogy of all time. What are we doing? What are the writers doing with Deadpool? It doesn't make any sense. Why didn't we push harder for Deadpool just to get the justice he deserved the first time around? Why did we fuck around the first Deadpool movie? And all of this absolute bullshit. Why not get a comprehensive backstory for his first story, and then incorporate a more, these linear jokes that sort of thread throughout this movie? Have that be the first movie, right? If you're really going to do Deadpool. And then, you know what? I'm just going to be brutal. Recast him, because I don't think Ryan Reynolds is a good pick for, after seeing him do Deadpool 3 times, there's something about his comedic performance in particular when it comes to Deadpool that just does not ever punch. He can do the drama of Deadpool really well. Like, again, his scene with Wolverine in the food table area, that scene is really well. Like, that's where I actually start to see Ryan Reynolds perform as an actor. And I'm actually starting to see Deadpool as a character, but when it's comedy, it's so flat, it's so boring, it's so consistently boring. It's just like, joke, 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 joke. It's like, where's the delivery type? Where's the nuance in the inflection? Where's the body language that supports the jokes? Where is the timing? Because even the timing, a lot of the times, I remember in Deadpool even 1, still had a lot of weird timing to a lot of its jokes. Or attempts at jokes. That followed into Deadpool 2, and, had that redemption with Colossus, as I mentioned, but outside of that, it's very much the same thing. So, yeah, it just seems like Deadpool just took a sorely piss-poor, starting point, and then continued on and tried something with the X-Men interaction, and, a big portion of that worked. Again, Colossus, for the most part, really, really worked. As sort of this, straight man to Deadpool's zaniness, and I use that term fairly loosely when I refer to the comedy aspect of Ryan Reynolds' acting in this movie, because there's nothing about the zaniness that really, really sticks out to me in terms, again, of the performance, in terms of how he's delivering these jokes very standardly. And it's just like, where's the chimichanga cringe, absolute balls to the wall attitude? Where has that been? It is not present in any of the Deadpool movies in terms of the comedy. It is not. It does not exist. None of these movies have convinced me that this Deadpool is good, or that, like, come on. Like, yeah, I expect Deadpool to be cringe, but I expect him to sort of favor into the cringe, and sort of almost simultaneously fight to not make it cringe simultaneously, while almost doubling up on the cringe. Like, there's so many nuanced ways you can perform that alone, and yet the performance is so fucking stale, and it's like, why? Why did they do that for all 3 Deadpool movies outside of the serious scenes? Like, seriously. I might get flack for this, but I think the only other movie I've seen Ryan Reynolds act in, and I mean truly act, is the movie Buried. I would highly recommend watching that because it is Ryan Reynolds as a peak actor. Like, peak actor. Outside of that, I would struggle to give you any other movies that I think was like, yeah, he's like acting. Like, he's giving you a character that you can really, follow that journey of said character. I don't see, the actor anymore. I see the character. And to me, whenever Deadpool is delivering any of his jokes, I just hear Ryan Reynolds. And to me, that is the ultimate embarrassment of a performance, if you ask me. And with Logan, it's just as baffling, because I'm like, what timeline is this even being pulled from? And again, the payoff of question mark timeline is beautifully performed, but that isn't the Logan from Logan. I mean, he's dead, right? That was confirmed in this movie. That Logan is dead. So it can't be that Logan, and it doesn't seem to be the Logan from X-Men 1, 2, or 3, or any of the other X-Men's past that. So what Logan are we looking at? I don't know. And the movie never really confirms what Logan we're looking at. Apparently it's the worst Logan, but yet I'm like, but what Logan is that? We've never seen that Logan. We've never seen Logan at his worst yet. So I don't know what it's pulling from. So many of this movie's issues come from outside of it, inside of it. It's use of time, it's use of a villain, it's use of the other Deadpools. Everything just outside of the drama is just like question after question of what are you doing? Why aren't you utilizing this better? Why aren't you punching even harder, but at a threaded rate rather than a condensed, like, yeah, we're really just gonna joke. It's the cocaine bit in this movie. Joke, with none of the punch. None of the punch feels like it exists. And I do think at least a part of that section is due to the trailer's fault of playing that joke again and again and again. It's like, what are you doing? That bit should have been hidden. You should not reveal, like, what should be punch after punch after punch after punch. That shouldn't be something you just get people to groan at. That should be, like, again, something you hide from, the trailers. Because they hid Lady Deadpool, as far as I'm aware, fairly well. Like, why did you hide that, but not the comedy bit that now seems extremely stale? Those two things don't seem to add up at all, if you ask me. Why not just hide both? Like, all you had to do is prop up a trailer with Deadpool and Wolverine fighting a bit. That alone could have sold the trailer without any of the comedy selling it for you. You could have hit all of the, the comedy bits as far as I'm concerned. Because Deadpool and Wolverine sounds like it would already sell. So, again, it's this weird choice of what they pick. Anyway, in terms of a score, I'm gonna have to go with a 3 out of 10. And I would go lower, because this movie is awful. It is bad. But I'm not going to deny those 3 good scenes that I pointed out. And I would argue that those scenes do make it worth some while, because they are really, really good. They really stand out in this movie. Like, as this other like, as if some other writer came in and wrote those scenes. Like, that's what it felt like every time it happened. So, yeah, that's my full review of Deadpool and Wolverine. And if you ended up enjoying it, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure to check out those links in the description. One will head you over to my petition to help out smaller YouTubers. Second, to my PayPal, where you can help support me and my channel directly. And third, to my Discord server, you can join, collab, chill, all that cool stuff. And until next time, everyone, bye-bye.